we want to make sure that we have enough time tonight without staying up late. All right, we're on Facebook, YouTube, and we are ready to go, ready to chant Jai Radha Madhava. Okay, I got lights, camera, action. Lights, camera, action. Let's make sure we got the right microphone here. Yeah. Okay, right microphone. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Balaba, Jaya Giri Baroda, Giri Baroda, Gopi Jana Balaba, Jaya Giri Baroda, Giri Baroda, Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Manachari, Kunja Vihari, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Yamuna Tira Manachari, Kunja Vihari, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Balaba, Giri Baroda, Giri Baroda, Gopi Jana Balaba, Jaya Giri Baroda, Jaya Giri Baroda, Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Manachari, Javiyadi, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Yamuna Tira Manachari, Kunja Vihari, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvadakacharya, also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Savaya, Jananatha Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Param Se Gaho Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopika Banath Sam Kund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturadam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschachate Jatarni. So, Om Ganathamidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Miditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, Chaitanya Charitamrta, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So we're going to go to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta. And as I mentioned, we're going to keep it pretty short tonight because we have a discussion about opening a potential restaurant here that I have to be at in a little while. So, we'll start with the Chaitanya Charitamrta, and I will read, and you're welcome to ask questions by raising your hand. Let me share the screen. Without further ado, here we go. And let me take off that. Let me. All right. Give me a second. Move the participants window over. All right. Squeeze the text a little bit. Move the text back. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we are starting with text 92 in the 7th chapter of the Adi Lila. The 7th chapter deals with the Panchatattva, 5 factors. So, and if you're interested in asking a question, raise your hand. Not in your video window because I won't see you, but in the participants section. Nachogal Bhakta Sange Kara Sankirtana Krishna Namopadeshi Tara Sarva Jana. So, of course, these are instructions that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, spiritual master, is giving to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is reciting or relaying these instructions so that the Mayavadis in Benares can hear about the importance of the holy name and of the secondary importance of studying Vedanta. My dear child, continue dancing, chanting, and performing Sankirtan in association with devotees. Furthermore, go out and preach the value of chanting Krishna Nam, for by this process you will be able to deliver all fallen souls. So, purport. It is another ambition of the spiritual master to see his disciples not only chant, dance, and follow the regulative principles, but also preach the Sankirtan movement to others in order to deliver them. And for the Krishna conscious movement is based on the principle that one should become perfect as possible in devotional service oneself and also preach the cult for others' benefit. There are 2 classes of unalloyed devotees, namely Gosjanandis and Bhajanandis. Bhajanandis, that's right. Bhajananandi refers to one who is satisfied to cultivate devotional service for himself, and Gosjanandi is one who is not satisfied simply to become perfect himself, but wants to see others also take advantage of the holy name of the Lord and advance in spiritual life. The outstanding example is Prahlad Maharaj. When he was offered a benediction by Lord Nrsingadeva, Prahlad Maharaj said, Naivojje para durachaya vaitaranyas twadvirya gayana mahamrita magna chittaha shochetato vimukacheta sendriyartha maya sukhaya baramudvato vimudan. My dear Lord, I have no problems and want no benediction from you because I am quite satisfied to chant your holy name. This is sufficient for me because whenever I chant, I immediately merge in an ocean of transcendental bliss. I only lament to see others bereft of your love. They are rotting in material activities for transient, that means temporary, material pleasure, and spoiling their lives, toiling all day and night simply for sense gratification, with no attachment for love of Godhead. I am simply lamenting for them and devising various plans to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. That's from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, 9th chapter, text 43. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains in his Anubhashya, a person who has attracted the attention of the spiritual master by his sincere service likes to dance and chant with similarly developed Krishna conscious devotees. The spiritual master authorizes such a devotee to deliver fallen souls in all parts of the world. Those who are not advanced prefer to chant the Hare Krishna mantra in a solitary place. Such activities constitute, in the language of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a type of cheating process in the sense that they imitate the activities of exalted personalities like Haridas Thakur. One should not attempt to imitate such exalted devotees. Rather, everyone should endeavor to preach the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in all parts of the world and thus become successful in spiritual life. One who is not very expert in preaching may chant in a secluded place, avoiding bad association. But for one who is actually advanced, preaching and meeting people who are not engaged in devotional service are not disadvantages. A devotee gives the non-devotees his association, but is not affected by their misbehavior. Thus, by the activities of a pure devotee, even those who are bereft of love of Godhead get a chance to become devotees of the Lord one day. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur advises that one discuss the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam beginning, Naitat samaracharaj jatu manasapi yanishvaraha, 10:33:30, and the following verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anashaktasha Vishayanyataram Upayunjata Nirabandha Krishna Sambandha Yukta Vairagyam Uchute. One should not imitate the activities of great personalities. One should be detached from material enjoyment and should accept everything in connection with Krishna service. So what's being stated here is that that one should understand basically everything belongs to Krishna. Nirbandha Krishna, everything is connected with Krishna. And real renunciation means to use everything in Krishna's service, not to give up something. Like Prabhupada one time gave the example, or several times gave the example, that let's say you're walking down the street and you see a pile of money on the street. So if you take that money, it's not proper because it belongs to someone. And if you say, I renounce that money, that's pretty stupid because it wasn't yours to renounce. But if you take the money and bring it back to the owner, that's the honest position and the best position to have. So in the same way, to say that one renounces this material world is ridiculous because you can't renounce something you never had. Our illusion is that we think we're the enjoyer and proprietor. So how can we renounce something unless we actually think we're the enjoyer and proprietor of something? But when one is Krishna conscious, one understands that one is not the enjoyer or proprietor of anything. Krishna is the what? Enjoyer. And was that? Oh, Bhaktaram Jakatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. One can come become peaceful, understanding that Krishna is the enjoyer. Bhoktaram Jagatapasam, Sarva Lokam Maheswaram. He's the Lord of all worlds. And Bhutanam, he's the well-wisher. Suridam Sarva Bhutanam, he's the well-wisher of all living entities. So this is a very, very important point to understand. So, Eta Bali Eka Shloka, Shikaila More Bhagavatera Sarae Bale Bare Bare. Saying this, my spiritual master, Lord Chaitanya again, speaking about what his spiritual master taught him to show the Mayavadis and Vinaris headed up by Prakashananda Saraswati what is the essence of Vaishnava practices and what is the goal of Vaishnava practices. My spiritual master taught me a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the essence of all the Bhagavatam's instructions. Therefore, he recited this verse again and again. This verse is from the Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, 2nd chapter, text 40. And it was spoken by Narada Muni to Vasudeva, to teach him about Bhagavad Dharma. Vasudeva had already achieved the result of Bhagavad Dharma because Lord Krishna appeared in his house as a son. Yet in order to teach others, he desired to hear from Sri Narada Muni to be enlightened by the process of Bhagavad Dharma. This is the humbleness of a great devotee. Evam prataswa priyanarma kricha jatanurago drutachitta huchai asatyato roditi rotigayati unmadavan richat lokavayaha. When a person is actually advanced, important verse, and takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord, who is very dear to him, he is agitated and loudly chants the holy name. He also laughs, cries, becomes agitated, and chants just like a madman, not caring for others or outsiders. Eitanna vakye amidrida vishvasadari nirantara Krishna nama sankirtana kari. Say Krishna nama kabu Oyaya nachaya gahi nachi nahi amiyapana ichaya. I firmly believe in these words of my spiritual master, and therefore I always chant the holy name of the Lord alone and in the association of devotees. That holy name of Lord Krishna sometimes causes me to chant and dance, and therefore I chant and dance. Please do not think I intentionally do it. I do it automatically. A person who cannot keep his faith in the words of the spiritual master but acts independently never receives the authority to chant the holy name of the Lord. It is said in the Vedas, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6-23, Yasha Devi Parabhakti Yata Devi Tata Koro Tashaiti Katita Yarta Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. This Vedic injunction is very important, and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu supported it by his personal behavior. Believing in the words of his spiritual master, he introduced the Sankirtan movement. Just as the present Krishna consciousness movement was started with belief in the words of our spiritual master. He wanted to preach, and we believed in his words and tried somehow or other to fulfill them. And now this movement has become successful all over the world. Therefore, faith in the words of the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the secret of success. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu never disobeyed the orders of his spiritual master and stopped propagating the Sankirtan movement. Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, at the time of his passing away, ordered all his disciples to work conjointly to preach the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. Later, however, some self-interested, foolish disciples disobeyed his orders. Each one of them wanted to become head of the mission, and they fought in courts, neglecting the order of the spiritual master, and the entire mission was defeated. We are not proud of this. However, the truth must be explained. We believed in the words of our spiritual master and started in a humble way, in a helpless way, but due to the spiritual force of the order of the supreme authority, this movement has become successful. It is to be understood that when Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu chanted and danced, he did so by the influence of the pleasure potency of the spiritual world. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu never considered the holy name of the Lord to be a material vibration, nor does any pure devotee mistake the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra to be a material, musical manifestation. Lord Chaitanya never tried to be the master of the holy name. Rather, he taught us how to be servants of the holy name. If one chants the holy name of the Lord just to make a show, not knowing the secret of success, he may increase his bile secretion, but he will never attain perfection in chanting the holy name. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu presented himself in this way: I am a great fool and do not have knowledge of right and wrong. In order to understand the real meaning of the Vedanta Sutra, I never followed the explanation of the Shankara Sampradaya or Mayavadi sannyasis. I'm very much afraid of the illogical arguments of the Mayavadi philosophers. Therefore, I think I have no authority regarding their explanations of the Vedanta Sutra. I firmly believe that simply chanting the holy name of the Lord can remove all misconceptions in the material world. I believe that simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can attain the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. In this age of quarrel and disagreement, the chanting of the holy names is the only way to liberation from the material clutches. By chanting the holy name, Lord Chaitanya continued, I became almost mad. However, after inquiring from my spiritual master, I have come to the conclusion that instead of striving for achievement in the four principles of religiosity, dharma, economic development, artha, sense gratification, kama, and liberation, moksha, it is better if somehow or other one develops transcendental love of Godhead. That is the greatest success in life. One who has attained love of Godhead chants and dances by his nature, not caring for the public. This stage of life is known as Bhagavata Jivana, or the life of a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I never chanted and danced to make an artificial show. I dance and chant because I firmly believe in the words of my spiritual master. Although the Mayavadi philosophers do not like this chanting and dancing, I nevertheless perform it on the strength of his words. Therefore, it is to be concluded that I deserve very little credit for these activities of chanting and dancing, for they are being done automatically by the grace of the Supreme Personality of God. And so several things I want to talk about here. Here, of course, the underlying theme of this purport is obedience to the order of the spiritual master. And Prabhupada makes reference to this in regard to his godbrothers and in regard to himself after the passing away of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur passed away, he requested his disciples to work together and form a governing body and make all the decisions by that governing body. And he never mentioned anything about appointing an acharya. So, that was a problem because they did not follow that instruction. Shortly after his passing, they had some sort of governing body, but that governing body started to appoint acharyas. And first they appointed one acharya, and some of the acharyas had spiritual trouble, and then they had a split between two so-called acharyas, and then the movement split, and then they went to court trying to argue about who owned the properties. And therefore Prabhupada said that both of the parties became asara. Asara means useless. Because if you disobey the order of the spiritual master, then basically your spiritual life is just like imagination. You're not really, you may think you're advancing spiritually, but you're not actually advancing spiritually. It's an illusion, like Prabhupada said in regard to his disciples. If anyone of his disciples thinks that he can become Krishna conscious outside of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, that person is living an hallucination. Hallucination means you see something that's not there, or you don't see things that are there. So that's the active principle in spiritual life. And what differentiates Prabhupada, I mean, apart from his starting the Krishna conscious movement all over the world, carrying forth Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prediction of making sure that in every town and village the holy name was chanted, what really differentiates Prabhupada is that he had firm faith in the order of his spiritual master and was ready to carry out the order of his spiritual master even without any so-called material help. And that's amazing. Before Prabhupada took sannyas, when Prabhupada was still engaged in business, Prabhupada was thinking that he was going to carry out the order of his spiritual master to print books in English and go to the Western world by raising money. But Krishna had a different plan. Krishna arranged that all of Prabhupada's endeavors in India, before Prabhupada came to the West, turned out to be, from an external viewpoint, a material viewpoint, they turned out to be failures. In fact, Prabhupada went bankrupt, he lost jobs, he had, even when he tried to preach, like in Jhansi, the locations were taken away from him due to some political intrigues. And so, one failure after another. But then when Prabhupada meditated on the order of his spiritual master, even without any material facilities, I mean, maybe a few rupees in his pocket, which he never got a chance to use, he was able to start a worldwide Krishna conscious movement. And that proves the injunction that within the order of the spiritual master is contained the success potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, we all experienced this when Prabhupada was on the planet, and he asked us to produce 17 hardbound books in 2 months, which was actually impossible. But because Prabhupada wanted it, it happened. And it's amazing. By the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, by the mercy of the spiritual master, a lame man can walk, a dog can swim an ocean, a blind man can see. So this is very, very important. So we're going to take some questions now. Jaga has a question. Okay, you are allowed to unmute, Jaga. I just allowed you to unmute.
Okay.
Your hand is raised. Okay.
To preach on the order of the spiritual master, if we're preaching out of guilt, there's no chance of being successful. So
I think if one follows the order of the spiritual master, whether he's feeling guilty or whatever, at least that's the first step.
But one has to preach out of compassion to be successful, and not.
Yeah, one has to preach out of compassion, but the compassion will come. Like a Prabhupada, so where does compassion come from? You tell me.
Compassion comes if you realize that people are suffering.
Yeah, so where does we're going to backtrack a little bit. Where's the realization that people are suffering come
from? I guess by following the order of the spiritual master.
Well, no. You're jumping a little bit. I was fishing by Krishna giving you that realization.
Oh, okay.
And where does that realization? Why does Krishna give you the realization? Because the spiritual master is pleased. Yeah, so you lost about 2 steps there, but you got to the right conclusion. But yeah, so compassion comes even if one. Even Lord Chaitanya gives that example in this particular part of the Caitanya Charitamrta, where he says, "What kind of mantra have you given me, Guru Maharaj?" And his Guru Maharaj chastised him. So he was following at least, you know, he was giving the example of following the spiritual master's orders, I wouldn't say blindly, but with faith. And then how things came about because of following the spiritual master's orders with faith. Because at least by his example, I mean, I'm saying this is just an example because he's God, he understood everything. But at least by his example, he said, "What kind of mantra have you given me, Guru Maharaj?" So in other words, the example was of someone just following the order of the spiritual master with faith, but not really being aware of what it was.
Mm.
So, because that's the blessing. That's the blessing. When of course, Prabhupada had compassion. I understand that, but really, I'm not. But many of Prabhupada's godbrothers also had compassion. I'm not saying they didn't have compassion. I mean, I met with some of Prabhupada's godbrothers, and I found them extremely compassionate persons. I met with Sridhar Maharaj and others, and I felt they were greatly compassionate. But I think the one thing that really differentiates Prabhupada was that he had that full trust. We're talking about faith. He had that full trust in the order of the spiritual master that he could do something without any prerequisites or any material or anything. He could accomplish something following that order of his spiritual master. And that's really what differentiates Prabhupada. I mean, of course, we could say he had much more compassion than anyone else. But really, as far as I see, his main motivation, at least from reading the biographies, was that it was the order of his spiritual master. I mean, he always connects the order of his spiritual master to his preaching activities. I mean, if you read his Vrindavan Bhajan, you'll hear that. If you read I forget how to pronounce it, Markandeya Dharma, when he comes to Boston Harbor, that he's always connecting his guru's order to his preaching activity. And I think, practically speaking, I don't think real spiritual compassion can come unless one is blessed by Krishna as a representative. I mean, before I came to the Krishna conscious movement, I can't say I joined, because that would be proud. I came to the Krishna conscious movement. Sure, I felt some sentimental compassion. The compassion I felt before I came to the Krishna conscious movement was like Bart Maharaj's compassion for the deer. I really didn't have any concept that all living entities were worthy of my love and compassion. I mean, before I came to the Krishna conscious movement, I would look at a cockroach with disdain at least. And now, now by Prabhupada's mercy, my consciousness has been changed. So my compassion has actually been spiritualized, whereas previously was sentimental. Like now, just like the other day, I don't know if I should talk about this, but the other day I was in the shower and there was a little spider there. And I was just praying that the water wouldn't hit him and wash him down the drain. What is that song? The Eensy Weensy Spider crawled up the water spout, down came the rain and washed the spider out. Anyway, so I would say by Prabhupada's mercy, I've actually developed a speck of actual spiritual compassion. And without Prabhupada's mercy, I had no concept of what compassion was. It was all extremely sentimental, just like Bart Maharaj's compassion. I mean, I can't compare myself to Bart Maharaj. I'm not that elevated, but it was sentimental. So I think you can't really connect or disconnect, sorry. I don't think you can really disconnect the compassion that manifests in one's heart from following the order of the spiritual master. They're all connected. It's all like synchronized. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And one more question, and then I got to go to this meeting. So, Mr. Gopal, you have a question? Actually, I should take ourselves off of screen sharing. I actually have to unmute Gopal. It's one of the few times that I agreed to unmute him. Okay, Gopal, you have a question? You can unmute yourself now.
Yes, Gurudev, thank you. Actually, to follow up on Jaga's question regarding compassion and the difference between the compassion that one has before you have the mercy of the spiritual master, is that more like condescension?
Yeah, it's more like sympathy rather than compassion. And not in every case, but it's. I would say in many cases it's sentimental. When I was feeling compassionate. Let me just think about Bart Maharaj. Oh yeah, many times I felt loving towards a deer. I wouldn't say I was looking down at the deer, but it was more like enjoying the deer. I was compassionate to the deer because the deer gave me a certain amount of enjoyment that the cockroach wouldn't give me. So in other words, it was based on really my own sense enjoyment, not really on the spiritual platform. Like you see with Bart Maharaj, it's exactly like that. It was based upon, not that's my business to criticize Bart Maharaj. It's based upon sense gratification because it's a cute little deer. I mean, who would not be attracted to a deer? Right?
Yes.
And, if I took the same soul and put him in a cockroach body, would you feel the same compassion? That's the test. The test of compassion. Here's a good one for you, Gopal. You put a cockroach here, or you can see me. Put a cockroach here and a cute little baby deer or cat. Which one do you feel more What?
The cat would eat the cockroach.
Which one would you feel more compassionate to, more loving towards?
The cat.
And the cat. So that's mundane, isn't it?
But I'm not sure that my love would be considered compassionate. It would be more,
I know, that's what I say, more exploitative. Or as I oftentimes give the example, that here's your beautiful cat that you're petting and everything like that, and all of a sudden I give him a haircut, I take the brahmachari buzzers. He already has a sika. Of course, what's under the sika smells real bad, but anyway, that's another subject matter. So he already has a sika, and you shave him up. Or here's another example. Oh yeah, here's one from the Shastras. Forget about the shaving of the cat. Here's one from the Shastras. You got Sanatana Goswami, who had sores all over his body. Now, if you came to me, Gopal, and you had sores all over your body, I would not only wear a mask, I would not let you in my house. And
you don't let me in now.
I know. That's because of the false ego. It has nothing to do with the sores of the body. But anyway, so it's the if you had sores all over your body, would you be so loving towards someone? I mean, that's the question. There's even that song. All these stupid songs come to mind from the 1960s. Will you still love me when I'm 84? Anyway. You remember that song?
Yeah.
something like that. Do you still love it? Yes, in his next life, Bart Maharaj became equally disposed. He didn't want to hurt the ants either. Yes. But in that life, he wasn't equally disposed. As Bart Maharaj, he wasn't equally disposed. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. I mean, don't we have these verses in the Bhagavad Gita? Samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labate param. And also vidya vinaya sampani brahmani gavi hashtani shuni chaiva svapaki cha pandita samadarshana. So I'm not criticizing anyone who discriminates, but it's an indication of, some self-centeredness there, just to be honest.
So it must be similar
I
on
mean,
a
look
subtle.
look at Vasudeva the leper. What was he doing? He was putting the bugs back into his body. I'm not saying that I would do that or it's a desirable spiritual thing to do, but the point is he was having compassion to those worms that were eating him. So when our love, I mean, of course, it's expressed differently. Obviously, our love towards a human being is going to be expressed differently than our love towards a cockroach. Obviously. I mean, that's practical. You have to have some discrimination. At the same time, the compassion should not be based on the body. If the compassion is based on the body, there's a certain amount of sense gratification built in, whether it's a type of sense gratification of looking down upon the person or just enjoying their particular physical constitution for one reason or other. And so we really have to be honest about that. That the pure devotee sees everybody equally, reacts differently because he knows different circumstances, obviously, and he's very strategic. But at the same time, the love is not based on the body. And I was very happy. I was able to feel some love for a spider and compassion for him. Now, I didn't put the spider on my altar. I didn't kiss him. That would have been deadly for the spider. But anyways, I didn't do any of those things. But at the same time, my feeling of compassion was there. And I understood that was due to Prabhupada's mercy. I'm not taking credit for it. I understand that previous to coming to Krishna consciousness, without Prabhupada's mercy, I didn't have that sort of compassion. Because that compassion was coming from Krishna on the spiritual platform. So that is something, that's the difference. So in other words, the point I was making with Jagat was that you really can't separate real compassion from obedience to the order of the spiritual master, because they're actually connected. You can't really, I don't see how you can separate it. Prabhupada had overwhelming compassion. Here's someone. How about the Kshatriyas killing the animals in the forest? Or Lord Rama and the golden deer? Yeah. So when the Kshatriya killed an animal, the animal was actually benefited. That's a little bit different. And the Kshatriyas also had to suffer for that. That's also described in the Mahabharata. But when they were doing their duty or performing the Ashwamedha or Gomedha sacrifice, the animals were actually benefited rather than hurt or having their lifetimes cut short. Anyway, so compassion has to be based upon our spiritual nature and understanding our spiritual nature. And so I would say, whatever compassion I have is only due to my connection with Prabhupada and Krishna as a result, and Lord Caitanya. Everything else before that, it was just like, this is extremely sentimental. Extremely sentimental. I have to be honest about it. But by Prabhupada's mercy, there's an awakening of some good qualities in my heart. Just an awakening. They haven't woken up yet. But anyway, they're rubbing their eyes. let's say, stumbling. But there's an awakening of good qualities. It's all due to Prabhupada. But that's what we say, that our good qualities are, the spiritual master's mercy is all that we are made out of, isn't it? Good stuff. My bad stuff doesn't come from Prabhupada. My bad stuff comes from me, and the good stuff comes from Krishna. And people sometimes are the opposite. They take credit for the good stuff, and they give the blame to God for the bad stuff. Or the devil. The devil made me do it. Okay, I think I have to get to this meeting.
Thank you, Gurudev.
We have a meeting. How about, when will I wake up? Oh, one devotee asked, when will I wake up? You'll wake up when I can get to Fiji again. Sumuk wrote that. He wrote it publicly. When I can get on a plane and they let me get into Fiji, then we will wake you up. So anyway, thank you very much. Tomorrow we'll have the longer class. Tonight was almost as long as normal. And it's good to see everybody. And it's a Sunday feast. Thank you all for joining us. Is there anything else? I wanted to say my life is very busy. But that keeps me out of trouble. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.